One of the things that business owners forget a lot is to prepare for their own retirement.
Hi, my name's Nick Palavita, and today I'm with a very special guest, a certified financial planner, a chartered retirement plan specialist, and president of National Pension Partners, Max Couliet. Max, tell me what you do at National Pension Partners.
Well, Nick, we help successful small businesses and professionals put together retirement plans that provide them the maximum retirement benefits and big tax deductions at the same time.
Well, how do you do this?
Well, we get on an internet conferencing system with the client. We review their goals, what they want to accomplish, and then put together strategies to help them in implementing a retirement plan that benefits them, not everybody else.
Well, that sounds really good, but how much does this cost?
Well, it's really not bad because the first consultation is free. That allows us to go through and discover whether this strategy works for that business and for you as the business owner and helping you maximize your retirement.
Well, Max, how do we get this free appointment?
It's really pretty simple, Nick. You can either go to our website below or call us at 877-252-1692, and then we can set up a time with either myself, Nick, or one of our other retirement plan specialists, another CPA or advisor in the office to go over this with you and make sure it fits for you.
Hi, my name is Lewis Haupt. I work with National Pension Partners, and I work with businesses to allow them to put the maximum away that they can for themselves and to save taxes.
Hi, I'm Brad Coyle, and I'm the brokerage manager at National Pension Partners. We're always analyzing plan fund choices in order to ensure the participant's success.
If you want more information on how we can help you and your business put more money away in a retirement plan than you ever thought possible, contact us at the website below or call us at 877
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Palavita. I'll be your host for today. Dr. Patmos is supposed to join us, but he may not be here right now. But we do have another person who's been on the show quite often, and we bring him in from Los Angeles. He's not a medical doctor, but maybe plays one on TV. Rick Rosner.
Hello.
Well, we have a very interesting topic today. What we're looking at is the vitamins versus vaccines. So what are your thoughts on that? Vitamins or vaccines?
So I take a ton of vitamins, but vitamins are kind of bullshit because they're you don't know if they work. Even if the drugs you're taking in vitamins are supposed to work, the test may have been done by injecting the substances into mice, and when you inject stuff, it can often be way more effective than if you take it orally, because your liver is just, functions to protect you against weird stuff, and it will knock out a lot of vitamins or supplements that are supposed to be, fancy and good, like resveratrol or fisetin. And when it comes to, vitamins versus vaccines, like lunatics and charlatans like to claim, that the vaccines are untested, which is garbage. The protocols for testing vaccines are they take years generally. They were hastened under COVID because COVID was killing 400,000 Americans a year. But the vaccines are highly tested. The garbage that vaccines give you autism was based on one study that turned out to be false by a guy who lost his medical license over it, talking about a preservative that is not in 99% of US vaccines, thimerosal, which is a form of mercury. And it was a fake study anyway. He made up his data. and it's since been disproved many times over.
Yeah. So the thing is, what happens on that particular vaccine? It was basically a fake study. What are your thoughts about these pseudo experts that are out there? In other words, the people that claim to have knowledge about vaccines being harmful. One of them is even claiming right now on the internet that vaccines are killing people. And there was one person.
RFK Jr., who himself has a lot of lunatic beliefs and a very shady history, hired a guy who's not a doctor, practices medicine without a license. This is the guy that RFK hired to investigate the link between vaccines and autism. A full-on lunatic quack who got fined $10,000 for prescribing puberty blockers for kids with autism, which is ridiculous and dangerous and ineffective.
Yeah. Well, since there's some claims that.
But also, one more thing is, you've supervised dozens of employees, maybe hundreds over your career, right?
Yeah.
The bottom 10% of the people who've worked for you a lot of them have been crappy.
That's correct.
And some of them were dishonest. And that's the same in every field. But
right.
So, putting the fake doctors aside, the bottom 3% of doctors are probably pretty lousy doctors. And we have 1.1 million doctors in the United States, so that's 33,000 doctors running around who are the bottom 3%.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be dishonest jerks who want to make easy money, lying to people.
Yeah, it's basically your normal distribution curve, and the people at the bottom of the curve are really pretty bad in almost any profession you go to. Well, the knock against vaccines. What about the polio vaccine? The anti-vaxxers say vaccines don't work. What are your thoughts about the polio vaccine? Did that not work?
No, it frickin' works. My uncle who passed away a few years ago, was one of the last people in America to get polio, and it made his life miserable. It affected his legs. He had to wear leg braces, so he would, be kind of walking around like Frankenstein,
Right.
And in his later years, once he hit his 70s, he got post-polio syndrome, where it returns in greater strength. So he went from wearing leg braces to having to use a motorized, wheelchair. And this guy was a doctor. He got polio in his early 20s as an intern from some patient.
Right. And also when it comes to data, because we do look at a lot of data that we're looking at in terms of people that are protected from the measles vaccine. We have a 97% protection rate, which means that 3% are not protected, or they'll basically get the measles even if they take the measles vaccine. Does that mean the measles vaccine, you shouldn't take it?
No. So here's the thing. So my wife just turned 60. She hears about measles, appearing in 20 states, and she wonders, should she get a fresh vaccination? She knows she was, her parents got her vaccinated. As every kid got, unless your parents were completely insane, got the measles vaccination back when we were kids. So we've got really good insurance. So they will, we can ask for stuff and they'll do it. And she asked, can I have a blood test to see if I still have immunity to measles? And she was tested. She got the results back. And yes, she still has measles antibodies 56 years after she was vaccinated.
Yeah. So the thing is, it has a long-term effect. Now, what about the anti-vaxxers? Are these people dangerous? In other words, they tend to promote that vaccines are bad, vitamins are good. You shouldn't take the vaccines. You should take vitamin C, and hence you don't need vaccine.
So everybody has all the information in the world in their hands via their smartphone. We also have all the misinformation in our phones. And for, I'm sure the reasons are like snowflakes, that people decide to embrace bullshit. But anti-vaxxers have picked out the bad information from all the good information. It's a lot of these beliefs go along with other bad beliefs.
Yeah. And the other thing that happened in 2024, 2025 is that flu deaths, 65,000 flu deaths, the highest in 15 years. What accounts for it? Why all of a sudden people are dying from the flu? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so a couple things. One is every March, except for until this March, the CDC, the doctors and statisticians get together and they look at, viral censuses from sewage across the U.S. They say they see which flu viruses are percolating away and are maybe like a little different than the years before and are likely to, because a fresh variation on flu will explode through the population because of our previous vaccinations are a little less effective for it. So they all these dozens of people get together and they're like, what antibodies do we need to put into this year's dose of vaccine to be likely for it to be effective against what's out there? And some years they guess, they're lucky. Some years they're less lucky. So maybe this year was a less lucky guess. Behavior has a lot to do with it. You're talking 65,000 deaths in 2020, 2021, that winter, 5,000 flu deaths, less than 10%, because everybody was masking up for COVID and staying away, remember all the lines where you stood at the 6 feet away? That really knocked down flu. So maybe our behavior is different. Certainly, I still wear a mask at the gym because, knuckleheads at the gym, sweating, breathing hard. But I'm like one of, 5% of people still masking up.
What are your thoughts on this? That medical research.
Wait, one more thing. This year, RFK Jr. and Trump, Doge, they shut it down. I don't even know if we're going to get a fresh vaccine in September when we usually get one. Will we get any vaccine? Will it be last year's, which wasn't super effective, just recycled? I don't freaking know. They're not.
What are your thoughts on this? The administration stopped medical research. What are your thoughts on that?
It's all bad. It's that this is the worst time in history to have people who are anti-science and anti-spending federal money on research running the government. That the whole world is changing super rapidly because of tech, particularly AI. And if we want to forget people dying, we want to capture the AI business and the businesses that spin off from it. And the anti-science, jerks are going to cost us that business. We captured the world's tech business in the 70s through the 2000s because there was a big science and tech push because we were afraid of the Soviet Union beating us. And that meant that we educated our kids in math and science, spent a ton of money, did a ton of funding in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and it paid off hugely.
What are your thoughts about this? It looks like we have this thing called the Children's Health Defense. And according to some studies, misinformation that comes from this, 25%.
So wait, this is one of those lunatic organizations that gives itself a respectable name and then pushes bullshit, I believe. It's like America's Frontline Doctors, where
Right.
it sounds, this is a bunch of doctors who gathered on the steps of the U.S. Capitol wearing their white doctor lab coats and their stethoscopes, like 2, 3, 4 dozen of them in like 2021. And these were those bad doctors. I mean, those bottom 3%ers, the charlatans who were making money off of scaring people away from vaccines and, selling their garbage, their supplements that don't work, the hydrochloroquine, the ivermectin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't seem to work. So what are your thoughts about this guy? I'm having a real problem with him being a lawyer, that he is a lawyer heading up Health and Human Resources with no medical background.
I mean, I know people by the stories you hear about him, like Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, paid a mother of two $50,000 to shut up in a settlement about claims that he drunkenly sexual assaulted her in a hotel hot tub a few years ago. You don't want people, and there are tons of stories about Hegseth, getting drunk and like climbing on stage at a strip joint, having to be pulled off stage before he could accost the strippers. RFK has a ton of stories like that he's driving down the highway and he sees a dead bear cub and picks it up, throws it in his car. He's going to do something with it. He's going to, I don't know, turn the fur into a rug. He's going to eat the cub meat or some stuff, whatever. I don't know. He just knows that he wants the bear. I mean, I do the same thing with, sometimes I'll see a nice piece of furniture somebody put out for the junk man. I've got a leg press machine, Body by Jake, that I got off the sidewalk, but I've never pulled a dead bear cub off the side of the road. So then he gets back home to Manhattan and he's like, really, I don't have any place to keep this bear cub. And so he leaves it in Central Park next to a bicycle, trying to make it look like the bicycle crashed into a bear cub. And somehow that will get him off the hook, which is just insane. There are not bears in Central Park.
Well, there are no bears in Central Park. Hey,
one more story. So RFK Jr. used to keep a sex diary where he would write down sexual encounters with women not his wife. And in 2001, his diary detailed 37 sexual encounters rated from 1 to 10, with 1 being light flirting and 10 being full-on intercourse. He's divorcing his second wife a couple of years after that. And she sees the sex diary, and this is the last straw, and she hangs herself. She commits suicide. This is RFK. This is the guy.
This is the guy that's running the health department. But I do have a question for Nick and everything. And one, I had a statement for you, Rick, which is I thought that's what you're supposed to do, was try to accost the people if you go there and see them. Because I remember my brother's first, I think it was his first engagement, because he's been married two times and everything like that. But I remember there was a stripper and I did try to make my moves on her. So I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And all along those lines.
You don't touch the strippers.
I know you don't touch them. It's against the rules, but I was trying to break them.
In Canada, there's a 3-foot no touch zone. So you can't even tip them. You can't even tuck your dollar bill into their G-string. And in Canada, hold on. In Canada, they don't even have dollar bills. They have dollar coins.
Right.
So what happens is the stripper sits on stage with her legs apart and it's a terrible game. They play, I think there's just one, maybe Ontario, I think. They call it the loony game because dollar coins have the picture of a bird, a loon. And so guys in a strip joint will just throw and roll the coins between the stripper's legs trying to hit a certain area. It's a ridiculous, but anyway, no.
It sounds ridiculous, but I had a question for Nick, and it's somewhat medical, somewhat legal, because I know he's a lawyer and not necessarily a doctor, even though sometimes he does play a doctor on TV. Nick does sometimes play a doctor here on the network and everything along those lines. But I did not really get to it. I said I was going to get to it tomorrow, but I guess I'll get to it now. What is your thoughts around this notion of the Supreme Court possibly defunding Planned Parenthood? Because that is a sex education, and it does fall in the realm of medicine as well. But there are a South Carolina case that is before the court, I think today, and it's still saying that it may lead to the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which deals with a lot around sex education. So your thoughts on that, Nick?
I don't think the Supreme Court has the power to defund Planned Parenthood. It's a legislative function. So it's really going to be up to the legislative branch, which would be Congress, to make sure that the funds are available or not available. So the only thing that the Supreme Court could say is that how they're allocated may be unconstitutional. And that would be the only thing. But they certainly do not have the power of the purse strings. They just have the power to determine whether or not the funds are being allocated constitutionally or not. And to give you an idea, it's like the Title IX, which we see in sports, that women's sports have to be funded equally to men's sports. So the Supreme Court has the ability to do that, but they certainly do not have the ability to fund or defund any organization in the United States.
Only 3% of Planned Parenthood's business, and well, not really business because they're a nonprofit, is abortion. The other 97% is sexual health services.
Sex health and sex education.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'm just saying the thing is the Supreme Court, they're pretty smart people, and they will stay in their lane when it comes to what their jurisdiction is in terms of budgetary decisions. So you have a question for me. I have a question for you, Mark. This guy, Joe Rogan, I'll have to admit, I've never seen his show. I just heard his name, and he's pretty popular. That's what I understand. But he endorses anti-vaxxers. Purportedly, he's a journalist. Do you journalists have any ethics?
He's not a journalist. Hold on. He's not a journalist. He's a
stand-up. Wait a minute. He's not a journalist?
No. He's a stand-up comedian.
That's what he was.
He's the host of Fear Factor. He used to make contestants eat pig penises. On Fear Factor, it was a game show competition where you did stuff that was either scary or disgusting. Scary, you might have to cross a bridge hanging on to a rope, hand over hand. The gross part, they would give you something, like a bucket of worms that you had to eat your way through. And one episode of Fear Factor, it was a bucket of pig penises. This is the guy who's helping America figure out what's true and what isn't true.
Okay, so Mark, since you are a journalism major and
I study at the great University of Marquette.
The only person on our network who does it. So you wouldn't consider Joe Rogan to be a journalist? Would that be correct?
No, I would consider him a podcaster and a comedian, as Rick just said, and everything like that.
One more thing. Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla had a show called The Man Show. I got to write for it for a little while. And by season 4, Jimmy and Adam were done with it. They had other opportunities they wanted to explore. But the production company wanted to do a 5th season. And the first 4 seasons of The Man Show, I thought were pretty good, pretty funny. And if you understood what they were up to, what we were up to, it was to make fun of women, sure, but also to make fun of what men consider entertainment.
To answer your question, Joseph James Rogan, born August 11th, 1967. This is from Wikipedia. Is an American podcaster, UFC color commentator, comedian, actor, and former television host. He hosts the Joe Rogan
all
Experience,
right,
a
so wait,
podcast
so let me.
in which he discusses current events, comedy, popular culture, politics, aliens, religion, etc., etc., etc. They do say his podcast is one of the most influential and most watched podcasts in the world, but nowhere in there did you hear any mention of journalism.
All right, so
Okay,
you had
thank
4
you.
seasons of The Man Show, which were pretty good as for a show like that. Then they did a 5th season, co-hosted by Joe Rogan. This was a terrible season where none of the writers came back. They hired a whole new set of writers, and they misunderstood the point of the show, which was to make fun of guys as well as women. Instead, the show was pretty just misogynistic and not funny.
No,
And
Rick,
Rogan was, the
Rick, along those same lines, I got a question for you because they listed genres, and some of them I know, and I know what they are. Observational comedy is comedy that is you observing somebody. A lot of the comedy you do here on this network is observational. Black comedy is kind of like negative comedy, for lack of a better term, and insult comedy, you're insulting the person. Satire is sometimes hard to define, but I love satire. I consider myself somewhat satirical at times and everything. But what the heck is cringe comedy? Because he's also listed as one of his genres, cringe comedy, and that one I'm not
comedy. Cringe comedy is stuff that's hard to watch because you're watching people be in awkward social situations and failing socially, and you can picture yourself in that situation, and it's just embarrassing. Like the Office had a lot of cringe moments of people being idiots, maybe not understand. Now, I think that term cringe comedy is being misused in that sense because Joe Rogan is not a subtle comedian. So I'm guessing that when they say cringe, it's cringe to watch people being forced to eat pig penises if they want to win $50,000. So I believe that they're misusing the term.
And apparently he's got a very mixed record, Nick, in terms of his politics, because he voiced support for same-sex marriage, recreational drug legalization, which one of our other shows would be glad to hear, and everything, universal health care, universal basic income, gun rights, and free speech, while opposing cancel culture and military adventurism. So he supported Donald Trump in 2024, but endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020. So he's been part of this conspiracy theory.
I can explain that. He doesn't have a lot of pushback. He's easy to convince. If you come on his show and you sit with him, I think his show runs 3 hours, maybe longer, and you have a bunch of stuff to say. By the end of the show, you will have convinced him. You will have changed his mind, or maybe he didn't have an opinion before, but he's easy to convince. Maybe gullible, maybe not skeptical enough, but that's just the deal. You guest on his show, and it's likely that he will believe what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know very little bit about him, except that he endorsed anti-vax doctors, which I would imagine that this is a person that has not much in the ethical range. But again, it sounds to me he has no professional responsibility whatsoever to anybody.
So there's a rhetorical device called the Gish Gallop, and that's where you come on a show and you're maybe not honest. You're promoting something that's garbage, but you have so much stuff to say, and you say it so fast that the host has no time to push back against all the garbage that you're peddling. And so if somebody like that comes on his show, that person will just go and go and go and go, and they might be getting stoned at the same time. They might be lighting up, which Elon Musk did. There's our famous clips of Musk getting high with Rogan on his show, and so he's just talking. The guest is talking and talking. Rogan's nodding his head, and there's no pushback.
Yeah, well, speaking of pushback, apparently there was pushback in 2022 because him and Tulsi Gabbard got together and had this notion, and I hope this is not the case because I do have nephews that are school age, of the whole litter box in schools, and they're calling the litter box in
All right,
schools
okay, that's the
because they were
deal.
claiming that public schools were providing litter box to students who would dress up as cats so they could have their
All right,
moment.
so there's okay, let's quickly. There's furry culture. There are some people, adults, who get satisfaction from dressing up as animals, as kind of cartoony, furry animals. They look like sports mascots, wolves and bears and kitty cats, and often they will, even have sex dressed as these costumes. And then, kind of based on that, like there was this garbage spread by rumor mongers like libs of TikTok saying that children who identified as animals, who said that, I'm a kitty, I'm a doggy, but these kids were allowed to, they set up litter boxes so the kids could piss and shit in the classroom because they thought they were animals. Completely ridiculous. Has never happened one time in the history of the United States that I know of. But gullible people believed it. Cynical people spread the rumor as kind of an anti-trans thing, that look, they're letting boys say they're girls, they're letting kids say they're cats. Never happened.
But did you hear, and this is news on Pod TV, I know that Nick doesn't want me to reveal it and everything, but Nick at one time thought that he was a horse. Nick really thought that he was a horse.
Yeah, but now my thinking is that we got to go because we're at the half hour and we have other shows coming on. We want to thank our viewers in the United States and around the world. Hopefully, Dr. Michael Patmos will be back next week. He's supposed to
then
be
we'll
here.
get more medicine and
yeah, he could have been called for an emergency, which does happen with a lot of our medical doctors.
And we'll see you next week. Call for medical emergencies.
Bye-bye.
All right.